And we are live. Hello to everybody around the world who is watching or not watching yet. My name is Pascal Lotta. I'm an associate professor at Kyoto University, and I'm joined today again by Dr. Michael Rossi. That's, of course, Michael Rossi from the YouTube channel Polysci. Michael, welcome back.
Pascal, good to see you once again. Good evening. Tokyo side, it's morning here. Here in New York, I'm actually at my office at Fordham University up in the Bronx. So good to see you once again. And I guess we are leading off with some right hot off the wire news here, right?
Yeah, because we just got in 2 hours ago, basically, the news that Israel claims it has killed Ali Larijani, the head of of Iran's security service. The one of the offices responsible, I mean, is a main coordinating office, and he's one of the leading figures now after the death of Ayatollah Khamenei. And what do you know about this affair so far? Do we know if we have any confirmation from Iran?
Nothing yet. Nothing yet. However, when we spoke maybe about 2 weeks ago with Ambassador Chas Freeman, we were also leading the conversation with the rumors that Khamenei was killed. And I had said that, unless there is confirmation from Iran, I take everything with a grain of salt. The thing that we realized is that Khamenei was killed, and it was denied by the Iranian government for at least 24 hours. So, in this, we also have to proceed with caution. But if Israel is going to claim that Larijani is dead, like before with Khamenei, that is a very, very, very bold statement to make, if not true. So at this point, if they're going to release this information, unless things change differently, we are simply waiting for Iran to confirm that. But if that is the case, then that's a major blow against the IRGC. The group that really runs the country, not the theocrats, not the clerics, not any ayatollahs, but really the Revolutionary Guard Council. So this would be a significant piece of information.
Yeah. So this is what the Guardian is putting out, and I just would like to give you just a few clippings, like how this is being portrayed. I mean, here they are quoting Mr. Israel Katz, right? The one of the commander in the general commander of the Israeli forces, as saying Larijani and Basish, so another person killed commander, were eliminated overnight and joined the head of the annihilation program Khamenei and all of the eliminated members of the axis of evil in the depths of hell. I mean, obviously a very spiteful and horrible comment to make, but they are again aiming for the head, for the leadership, right? And apparently Israel is still after decapitation strikes and still thinking that this will get them somewhere. Although if Iran has shown one thing over the last 2 or 3 weeks, is that even if you kill their leadership, you've got the next ranks coming through, but they still are going after the leadership. What are your thoughts on that? Because the strategy, I mean, obviously the Iranians, sorry to just jump in, but the Iranians obviously try to make the point that decapitation strikes with them, they don't work. The missiles will not stop flying because the system has been set up to actually cope with exactly that.
Yes, this is effective. Well, one thing is that we may very well see an AI-generated video of Larijani buying coffee in some Tehran coffee shop as well.
Can you expand on that reference a little bit, because it's about Netanyahu being rumored to be dead?
Yes. So, I mean, we still have not confirmed where. In all likelihood, he is either in a bunker, either in Israel, or more likely Germany. If you remember that his plane was circling over the Eastern Mediterranean for about 4 hours until it found safe haven within Germany. No surprise there. But to get back to this idea of attempting to effectively gain leverage in the war by decapitating its leadership. And Iran has proven itself to be immeasurably durable within this. They know this. Mm-hmm. They have prepared themselves for this. If Israel has been effectively gearing up for a major conflict with Iran for years, if not decades, Iran knows this. And they have especially learned this since the 12-day war from last year. So that is, you get rid of the leader at the top, and there will be somebody to immediately replace them from below. It also is not going to sit well with the Iranian people. Remember, the United States and Israel still says that they stand with the Iranian people, as they're bombing children's schools and apartments and civilian targets and other elements like that. So in this regard, I think that if Israel has the ability to take out the commanders, whether it's Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, or wherever, they're going to do that. But none of these organizations, none of these governments cracks, none of them capitulate. In fact, all that it does is just drag the country further into conflict. But one thing that we talked about last time around, and this is something that I am now absolutely confirmed on, is that Israel and the United States are not going to suddenly give up and go home. They are not, they are in it. They are dragged into this, and they are going to engage in scorched earth policy before they realize that they overplayed their hand. And I think that this is really a second thing that we can talk about now that we are now in 2 weeks, 3 weeks into this conflict. Both the United States and Israel grossly underestimated the will of engaging with a country like Iran. This is not Lebanon. This is not Syria. This is not a country that you can just simply lob a missile in. The country claims, screams uncle, and all of a sudden you get your way.
Yeah. And I just want to point out one thing. I mean, one of our viewers just wrote a comment saying that, Iranian here, I'm afraid I disagree with Professor Ali Larijani, was never an official part of IRGC. So just for everybody, it is. Iran is a highly complex political construct, and it is, and this is, if this is the case, apologies, right? That we misportrayed it, because Iran is highly complex. But Larijani is one of the major political figures that was actually also one of the, and I'm pretty sure this is true, the chief negotiator also during the JCPOA, the nuclear deal, like negotiations and so on. So, and he has been in the Iranian top leadership for a while. Just to put this here, and he's also a man who's obviously, just like Ayatollah Khamenei, actually, they were not afraid of dying. I mean, one of the last appearances that we know of is that he was in the Quds Day march in Tehran. I mean, he was in the crowd with people, and they also broadcasted that. Just as it was clear, because Khamenei actually said, "I'm going to stay in my house. I'm not going to hide in a bunker." Mohammed. The people on my channel have pointed that out before, that the leadership actually expects to be targeted and deals with that, not as something to be afraid of, but something to actually work with. And this completely, utterly, of course, changes the calculation. And of course, in my view, our media is getting that quite wrong at the moment. I mean, here in this article of The Guardian, they're writing that, if Larijani is actually dead, it would be a devastating blow to the to the regime and to the entire war-making capacity of Iran. And I do just not think that that is the case. This is wishful thinking,
Yes.
again, from the West, and this is not like to downplay the severeness of potential strike at another one of the leaders of Iran, but it's just to say that the entire system is built in a way to actually absorb this, because it was utterly clear that they would do this, and in a sense it might even be more of a sign of desperation, that in order to have something to show, to have achieved, that you just kill individuals instead of trying to go after military targets.
This is actually one way of looking at it as well. I don't want to say that they just came up with killing Larijani off the cuff here. I would imagine that this has been part of the the main military strategy for both the United States and Israel. But leading into this, and waking up this morning and reading the news that's coming in, not from Western sources, because they want you to believe that Iran is about ready to crack. But it's been a couple embarrassing days for the United States and Israel. Tel Aviv continues to be hammered by Iranian missiles and drones. So the Iron Dome has been completely shattered. Netanyahu has now missed 2 of his national security briefings. So that, kind of drives the idea that if he's not dead, he's either in hiding or he is significantly injured. And we also have heard stories, they have not been confirmed or not, whether or not some of the more reprehensible members of the Israeli Knesset, Ben Gvir, is either dead or wounded. Eliezer Smotrich, his son, has apparently been wounded in Lebanon. Israel is gearing up for a full-on ground invasion of Lebanon, and right now we hear reports of Israeli army contingents being ambushed. They are not having as easy of a time as they thought it would be. Ultimately, what this boils down to is that you cannot win a war by simply lobbing ballistic missiles from hundreds, if not thousands, of kilometers away. If you want to achieve your victory, you need to put boots on the ground. This is something that Trump is constantly talking about doing with Iran, but in my opinion, and I don't know, I mean, this is just the way that I've seen it. Either Trump is becoming, he used to be laughably delusional. I think at this point, it's almost clinically delusional. And I don't know whether this is just his own ego and collapsing narcissism forcing him to sound defiant, or whether he is given misinformation by the people that surround him, just simply in order to put up some show of defiance and strength. But, we hear about how he failed to get NATO to respond to engaging with opening up the Strait of Hormuz. We hear closest allies, the UK, France, Germany, not committing any of their naval forces to the Strait of Hormuz. I had kind of joked a couple of days ago that he can always rely on the 3 Baltic, republics, Ukraine, and possibly Kosovo, because those are the 5 that will do whatever the United States says for brownie points. Estonia actually said that if need be, they'll send their ships in. So, look out, Iran. But, as far as the EU was concerned, they've also said that they're not going to do this. So Trump is isolated. Trump is effectively isolated. Both him and Israel are realizing that they're in this for the long haul. We have now heard reports that this war can continue on for at least another couple of months. I think at one point someone had even said this can go until September. And what is this going to produce as far as war attrition, fatigue, a drain on the economy? Because as we've noticed, the United States and Israel do a very good job of these high-profile targetings, right? Whether it is Ayatollah Khamenei, whether a couple of years ago it was Soleimani, now today it is allegedly Larijani. I'm going to, at this point, just simply assume that that is the case, unless otherwise. I'm just going to take that more so with, all right, I'm willing to lean on that, because if Israel is saying that, they need a victory. And it would be even more pathetic if all of a sudden he appeared and said, no, I am, I'm still alive. But while this is happening, Iran is also hammering away at the Gulf states and forcing them to either completely abandon their alliances, their government alliances with Washington and Tel Aviv, halt the production of oil, and effectively make create huge ripple effects on the global economy. This is something that Trump cannot afford, especially as we are going into midterm elections very, very soon. And his popularity is very low, especially among a vocal number of erstwhile MAGA supporters that now feel absolutely betrayed by Trump.
Right. And the whole political scene in the United States, of course, is something that that really baffles me. That after all of the peace talk, after being the president who incorporated the Board of Peace, and made it a UN Security Council mandated body, right? As in, he got the okay from the Security Council, because China and Russia didn't veto this thing. He is still going warmongering around in like one of the most blatant ways that we have seen. I mean, in a way much more straight into your face than much more even than George Bush Jr. Barack Obama, of course, who was constantly trying to brand himself as a president of peace, but doing it like through the back door in Syria and in Libya and whatnot, and the drone killings in Afghanistan. But Trump is now doing it open and out, and just says, I do whatever I please, and I bomb whoever I want. We will kill as much as we please. It's while then yesterday I read that he is proposing a Strait of Hormuz peace board or something, like an alliance of the willing, a coalition of the willing to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. And this thing has been dead in the water. I mean, obviously, right? Because no sane nation is going to join him. So the only one he can potentially count on maybe sending one or two ships might be the French or the Germans, because they're far out enough of their depths. But even them, I highly doubt that they will send anything at all, because it's still obviously way too dangerous. And one thing that tells us is, of course, that Iran maintains all of these capabilities, right? And again, you take out Larijani, well done, you killed one man, but you have still an entire army, several armies against you, and you're not able to deactivate or to destroy their missile capabilities, which is what every sane observer before the war started actually said. This country is too large. They have too many facilities. They're too prepared. You cannot take out everything. And if we now speculating about the deaths of senior Israeli figures, which, if we're honest, like, this is what we would have to expect, because Iran made a point out of trying to do an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, right? They've always been trying to strike back symmetrically. So this would be a symmetrical strike at their leadership. Although if they're not able to do that, if the Israelis are able to protect their top leadership, then that would tell us that where they set their priorities.
Well, they did say that Netanyahu is certainly somebody that they would go after and kill. So let's assume a couple of things. If Larijani is in fact dead, and Netanyahu does appear not as a AI image, but as an actual individual who is not wounded, Iran is very much going to use this as a case for retaliation. Missiles have now hit his private residence close to the Knesset. We see videos of Israelis flocking to the airports, flying back to the countries that they were originally born in. And it's interesting how everyone that's interviewed sounds like they come from, Brooklyn, New York, or Lakewood, New Jersey. English with American accents. This is, certainly not indicative of a native of Judea or Samaria. But they can run, and that's where they're going to go. And ultimately, I think that Israel is more likely to be fragmented internally than Iran will. For a number of reasons. Before this conflict began, and I'm not even talking about Iran, I'm talking about 2+ years ago, October the 7th, Israel was experiencing significant socio-political internal conflicts that have largely been just buried, completely ignored within Western press. Netanyahu is widely regarded as unbelievably corrupt and has made a number of political enemies within the country. Israel likes to portray itself as a country for all Jews around the world, and yet there is still there's a socio-ethnic, socio-cultural hierarchy within Israel still. That prioritizes more European Ashkenazis over the Middle Eastern Sephardis. And then when we get to, Ethiopian Jews, among others, I mean, they're basically considered, very, much lower rung here as well. So, we have heard stories, we have heard analyses over the last 2 years that once this conflict, once this war is over, whether it's with Palestine or with Lebanon, among others, I mean, Israel is incredibly volatile for internal turmoil, whether it is, political upheaval, social, unrest. We see demonstrations in the streets of Haifa and Tel Aviv between the ultra-Orthodox and the more secular. We don't see this in Iran. Now, maybe it's just simply because this news is not getting out in Iran. But then again, Israel is very, very clear on maintaining a picture perfect narrative of their country. And yet these things are leaking out. So even if Iran is not as successful in eliminating the top brass of Israel's political and even military leadership, I still feel that Israel is much more likely to be racked by years of internal turmoil, added to the fact that their global image is now in the absolute gutter. I mean, they are just widely despised around the world, especially through social media.
I'm very interested in that one. Like, since you are in New York and you've got your finger on the pulse of the United States as well. I mean, okay, so mass media is maybe not the perfect place to take that, but it has been to me it has been indicative that the New York Times was way more critical of this war than of the Ukraine war. And we've seen in the mainstream press like articles that surprised me in terms of like how they were obviously not in line, even if they were not very, intellectually honest with the jargon that they use. But they were. It's a different thing from the war in Ukraine, right? Of the way that they are also trying to portray the what is happening behind the scenes in the White House, and how Donald Trump is anything but portrayed as a great leader, and more as somebody who puts out a lot of just tweets and Truth Social commentary in order to justify what is happening. What is your take about AIPAC? What is your take about what John Mearsheimer wrote about with the Israel lobby? This is so much out in the open now that it's going to be very hard to put that genie back into the bottle of anti-Semitism, right?
You will not put it back in. Mainstream media at this stage of the game is widely distrusted. I mean, when the New York Times comes out, much more critical this time, then you know that the gatekeepers have lost control over the narrative. Bret Stevens's op-eds notwithstanding, Bret Stevens never, met a non-Western country that he didn't want a regime change in. But I can tell you this much. I mean, there's a lot of things that are going on, at least as far as the perception of, Israel, Zionism, anti-Semitism, the role of AIPAC is basically considered toxic at this point. If you are a political official and you receive AIPAC money, that is now a major, major liability, both within the Democrat and the Republican camp. What I find more interesting, and I was talking with a colleague of mine about this a couple of days ago, is that some of the most vocal criticisms of Trump, of the whole, not even, the whole America first, no, Israel first, no, Israel only at this point is what many, like Ted Cruz or Lindsey Graham, Mike Huckabee, they all come across as just, some people are even saying they need to be tried for treason. The fact that they're more loyal to another country. If you don't support Israel, you don't support America. It's like, it's becoming so blatant. It's so many things. It's like, when somebody who suffers from narcissistic personality disorder and the mask finally comes off, you begin to realize how just bold-faced dishonest they are. And this is exactly it. I think for people like Cruz and Huckabee and Graham and others, the mask has come off. They don't care, right? They absolutely don't care because they know that they're going to be implicated. So they might as well ride this all the way to the end. But to my point, and that is the biggest criticisms are coming from former MAGA officials. The Tucker Carlsons, the Candace Owenses, the Marjorie Taylor Greens, who a couple of years ago was considered to be, one of the real kooky conspiracy theorists. And now, I don't know whether this is just because of the world that we find ourselves in, or whether they, got hit, especially Marjorie Taylor Greene with a sense of clairvoyance, but they are now becoming the voice of reason. Tucker Carlson is seen as more of a journalist than the talking heads on cable TV. I think probably one of the best things that he could have done was have these real grill sessions with Ted Cruz and Mike Huckabee to really get them to say what they truly believe, which is so outlandish at this point, so ridiculous that it is turning many erstwhile America First conservatives away from the Trump camp. The Democratic Party has been quiet for the most part. And I think the reason why is because A, they just don't have, they don't have the balls to do this. Number two, they're just simply watching the Republican Party in their mind, sort of crash and burn, and they'll just, ride this out to the midterms. But we also have to understand that there are many, many, many political officials within the Democratic Party that absolutely prioritize Israel. And alongside what's happening with Israel and Iran, I'm sure that you and our respective viewers know Cuba is being starved out, is being besieged. They have run out of, so the power grids went out. And do you hear any condemnation coming from Democratic? No, because as far as they're concerned, it's still the old Cold War mindset. For them, they would be absolutely delighted if the communist regime in Cuba collapsed. They would be delighted if Larijani's alleged death in Iran sparked an uprising in Iran. They would be absolutely delighted. I have no doubt in my mind that people like Chuck Schumer or Hakeem Jeffries would absolutely love to shake hands with Pahlavi Jr. as he somehow takes his, his idealistic return to Iran.
And that's the problem, isn't it? It's like the United States, even if the Republicans and Donald Trump lose power big time in the midterms and so on, we are dealing with the uni-party, right? It's like, okay, then you get like a very dishonest tweet from Kamala Harris on the 1st of March that, she opposes the war with Iran, and under her, she would never have gone to war with Iran. Come on, we know you would have gone to war with Iran. You would have done exactly what these AIPAC crowd and so on, and the whole political process pushes you to, because that's what you did during 4 years as vice president under Joe Biden, while that man was like vegetating away. So it's like, it's just frustrating to see the most powerful country on earth, like in military terms, but also in economic terms and so on, to be in such a one way street with like such tight walls on the left and the right,
Mhm.
and that's just where it's going to go. And while pretending that that this is what democracy is, like, no, the democracy of the United States doesn't actually allow for proper course changes. It doesn't. It just allows for like it allows for the one way street, but please choose whether you want to do it with a red lollipop in your mouth or a blue lollipop in your
Yeah.
mouth. You can change the flavor, but not really the direction. But how many people is your guess would we now have in the United States in our bubble? The people who would agree with what we are talking about. How big in
Yeah.
percentage points would you like guess this bubble, this kind of opposition to the current course is at the moment? Are we talking about 5 to 10%, or are we more talking about 30 to 40%?
It's hard to say because I don't think anybody has really done the proper measurement. But what I can tell you is that percentage gets larger and larger the younger the generation you measure. That I can tell you. So from my own personal experience, and just take it as that, this is not
anecdotal experience. Okay.
This is anecdotal. This is not macro analytical, right? But as you know, right, I teach at a number of universities: Rutgers, Fordham, Pace, Long Island, among others. I was here at Fordham 2 years ago when the October 7th incident had happened. And when that first came out, the university, along with multiple other universities, so Fordham is not the only one that does this, but they issued these statements, condemning the terrorist attacks, standing with Israel, the typical boilerplate material, completely to be expected, nothing out of the ordinary. I was a bit hesitant in the beginning to bring these topics up in my class because I was teaching a class on conflict resolution at the time. And as it just turned out, we had gotten to the subject of Israeli-Palestinian protracted conflicts, two-state solutions, this, that, the other thing. And I was wondering what my students were going to say. Fordham is, at least traditionally speaking, it is a Jesuit university. It's an excellent university. It's an absolute excellent university. So I was wondering how many would be on the conservative side. My point is, Pascal, is that the students' overwhelming opinions about this are in sympathy of the Palestinian cause, are highly critical of Zionism, and many of them are Jewish themselves. We need to be very, very, very clear on this because this is a significant internal conflict, not just in the United States but elsewhere, separating, differentiating, right, between Zionism and Judaism, anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism. And some of the biggest critics, some of the biggest proponents of being anti-Zionist are themselves Jewish, saying this is not in my name. So what I'm saying here is that the people that don't take the narrative from the media industrial complex at face value is incredibly large. The younger one gets. The older one gets, these are the ones that are watching cable news, network news, and this stuff is already filtered and sanitized for our protection.
Although I must say, in defense of everybody like 50 and above, 66% of the viewership of my channel are 50 and above. So that's just to say, like, the bubble on our side is like, the people tune in more the older they are. So at least to this form of medium that we are currently using, long form on YouTube, and kind of like let's call it intellectual discussions, right? So this is something that appeals to people 50 plus, and virtually nobody below 20 is watching. Or if anyone below 20 is watching, please write a comment. I would just be so
I don't know.
pleasantly surprised.
I tell my students, I'm talking with Pascal today, so they get excited about that. But that's also good. I'm talking about the people that I see on a daily basis, my university students, and that's one thing. I think a lot of it is also because many of them they don't have a cable subscription. So where do they get their news from? They get it from the internet. They get it from social media. Some people are going to say, oh, you get your information from TikTok or Instagram or Twitter. That's not reliable. Interestingly enough, these are the groups that are effectively pulling the curtain away. And you see the little guy with the machine that says, oh, pay no attention to that. That scene from Wizard of Oz. So ultimately, the gatekeepers of the narrative might have controlled it back in 2022 with the Ukraine war, but a lot of that also came with many news portals completely eliminating any Russian journalism, right? So RT, Itartas, any of that kind of stuff was completely banned. I was wondering for a while when I was doing my translations early on whether YouTube was going to punk me as well for doing the full on translations, which they haven't, right? Which they haven't. But that this is very much a case where there is a firewall against any alternative sources of information. Increasingly, we find this stuff through social media, through Telegram channels as well. And this is why younger individuals are much more likely to take what their elected officials say with significant grains of salt. And these are the ones that are going to, as you said, Kamala is going to now say March 1st, oh, I'm against this war in Iran. And you're basically saying, come off of it. Come on. When you were vice president, you were absolutely in Israel's corner. Why? Because we can go back in time. We can find the Twitter posts. We can find the statements and hit the reply button and say, this you, right? So yep. Especially when it comes to a whole bunch of, I would say, doomer MAGA Republicans. And these are the ones that are, lining up with Trump, not just Ted Cruz or Lindsey Graham, who are probably the two most reprehensible ones out there. But you have people like Randy Fine, you have Andy Ogles, you have at least these two in particular. They are all about, all for Israel. And if you're against it, not only are you anti-Semitic, you're anti-Christian, you're anti-American, you're anti-Western. And then you click the comments of these posts, and they're getting ridiculed left and right. The only thing is that you have to ask yourself, how do these people get elected? How do they get reelected? So everybody knows Lindsey Graham is up for reelection this year. At this stage of the game, he might campaign in South Carolina, which is where he's from, or he can just simply, ride around, Tel Aviv and Haifa, and look for votes there. But he claims to be there more than he's in South Carolina. I can't guarantee that he's going to lose, but now they are much more in the crosshairs of increasingly vocal and much more empowered citizens willing and able to call BS on them.
What do you think the impact of this war has been over the last, it's now 2.5 weeks, right, in general on the United States and the political system? I mean, apart from just MAGA falling apart and Donald Trump basically disappointing large swaths of his votership, do you expect that this war might go to the level of like the Vietnam War in terms of galvanizing US society, or is that maybe too tall an order? Because the opposition to the Vietnam War was massive, right? And with millions of people in the street, like literally millions. And is something like that imaginable?
I don't think so, unless two things come into play. Number one, we get to the stage where we have boots on the ground and they are, dying in droves. And the second is that the boots on the ground come through military draft. because those were the two big things that led to mass protests.
The draft, yeah.
The draft was a big thing. And not surprisingly, as soon as Vietnam is over, we get rid of the draft. People are talking about reinstating the draft for a number of reasons, one of which is to instill a sense of patriotism. I have enough colleagues of mine who have served multiple duties, and they are the biggest critics against this. I mean, if you want at this point to find some of the biggest critics of the way in which the U.S. military operates, look no further than actual veterans who will tell you that once their tour of duty is done, they're discarded. A good number, especially when it comes to health issues, mental issues, PTSD issues. It's disgraceful. It's absolutely disgraceful.
So, sorry, I just need to ask, because like we've also read all of these news now about these the poor sailors on the which one is this? The Harold Ford, the aircraft carrier that are now in their 10th month, and they already had problems like last month with their toilets, and now apparently a fire broke out in one of the washing rooms, and hundreds of bunk beds were basically burned down, and people got like smoke poisoning and whatnot on an aircraft carrier that's not even close to Iran yet, or that's not being used in active battle against them because they're too afraid to actually go close to Iran. I mean, does this war have a potential to actually throw such a bad light on the U.S. military services that it might actually impact their ability to recruit? We know that Hollywood is like a super awesome shilling for the U.S. military and Top Gun and whatnot, and all of this glorification of the military. But does this one have the potential to actually kind of drive the point home? Oh, it's not as glorious as it seems once you're enlisted.
We are kind of shifting back into that demoralized period of the mid to late 70s. Vietnam certainly destroyed a lot of that image, which needed to be resuscitated throughout the 80s with small little wars here in Central America that Reagan was able to pick one little dictator off after another, only after supporting them and then bumping them off. Then comes Gulf War I, which was a public relations miracle, followed by the end of the Cold War, the collapse of the Soviet Union, the United States engaging in, a decade and a half long period of military unipolarism, give or take a Black Hawk down in Somalia to, shush that up or whatever. But then you add the war on terror, you add Afghanistan, you add Iraq, and you add the idea, as I said before, I've had students that have served multiple tours, and I don't begrudge them. They went, I didn't. So who am I to say? But I've spoken with them, and a lot of them have said, look, probably one of the most disappointing things is that they put in their time. They put their life on the line. They do what needs to be done. And they realize that a lot of times they're expendable. Or as soon as they finish their tour of duty, aside from a parade or, a Veterans Day, support the troops or whatever it is, they don't get they don't get the level of support. They don't get the level of investment that they thought. And so they have much more of a right to openly critique what happens, again, behind the scenes and what is counter to the official narrative. So especially in an age now where social media, podcasts, YouTubes, Instagrams, TikToks give people like them platforms to openly say what is really happening versus the sanitized narrative that is being promoted, this is absolutely contributing to a number of things. Not so much a decline in morale, but a realization that signing up for the military is not what it's all cracked up to be. And recruitment is experiencing a significant downturn, a decrease in enrollees. which is why some officials are suggesting a draft, which is just going to throw ethanol on smoldering coals. It's going to be a disaster. It's going to be an absolute disaster. But, more to the point is that with Iran, why? What are we doing in Iran? Why are we fighting Netanyahu's war?
Yeah, why is the United States fighting Netanyahu's war? I mean, again, the Mearsheimer has an answer to that, but the other side is, of course, like the Brian Berletic side that says like no, this is you got it backward. I mean, this is a war of imperial expansion that the United States wants to fight, and it's just convenient to have the Israel as this excuse and scapegoat at the same time, and this is very much has been in the works for decades, and now it's just being implemented. And I can't tell which one it is, but maybe just to, in the last couple of minutes,
Sure.
what do you think was very important over the last week in the development of the war, that aside from Larijani's potential death, that we should be aware of in order to have a picture of what's going on?
Well, I think that Trump cannot rely on NATO to expand this conflict.
Yep.
NATO has said that this is not their scenario, this is not their avenue, which you have to think about. This is somewhat interesting because, yeah, they can play exactly by the books. This is outside of Europe, this is outside of our scope. And yet some of the same officials are talking about NATO having, branch offices in East Asia, in Southeast Asia to counter China. But when it comes to here, right, they don't want to get involved. Right? They don't want to get involved. So that's probably the first thing, is that Trump is running out of friends. He's running out of allies. And I think a lot of it is that increasingly so, countries don't want to ally behind two of the least popular countries in the world right now.
Right.
And if people realize that Israel is using, it's hard to say where the dividing line between America ends and Israel begins. Some people say one's a puppet of the other, one's a proxy of the other. I mean, you listen to how vociferously pro-Israeli people like Ted Cruz or Lindsey Graham are, and you have to think, what does Mossad have on them that makes them say what they say? But be that as it may, we won't realize this until, many months, years afterwards. But I think another significant point since we last spoke is that Israel is getting hit hard. They're getting hit hard. Tel Aviv, Haifa, they are now getting hit hard, which means that the Iron Dome, which was billed to be, absolutely impenetrable. I guess it is impenetrable when your biggest enemy are Palestinian children with rocks. But when, you actually go up against an army that fights back, it's pretty quick how suddenly this defiant attitude, and this also explains why social media is so much, and it's a weird thing to say, but why social media is absolutely so much in favor of sort of seeing this eye for eye justice that Israel has been finally getting, because we see the hubris, we see the absolute sense of entitlement that many Israelis feel that they just simply deserve to have in terms of defending a country at the expense of everyone else out there. So the narratives are coming completely undone, and attempts at trying to correct those narratives. You might remember, I think it was about a year ago, Hillary Clinton, of all people, but I'm not surprised, said something like, the reason why the kids are pro-Palestinian and they're anti-Israeli is because they're getting the wrong message through social media, and we need to set them right. Okay. Every time you try to set the narrative right, we realize how bogus the narrative is. We realize how transparent that narrative is. It's like I have this sort of this unofficial rule in my classroom for my students, and I say, look, it is really a two-part rule. Number one, if you're going to cheat within your expected capabilities, and number two, if you
don't get caught.
Well, if you get caught, if you're going to lie convincingly. At least lie convincingly. I might actually give you a couple points just for creativity, but they can't even lie. That's the thing. The narrative is so transparent at this point that the world is, a good chunk of the world is on Team Iran. Regardless of the government, regardless of the internal dynamics of the country. But it's this idea that Iran is not going to just roll over and die. I just read, and this was just a weird thing from Newt Gingrich. Remember Newt Gingrich, the 1994 Republican? He came up with this great idea. This is fantastic. He was like, look, if we can't control the Strait of Hormuz, let's just create a canal. Let's just, create some thermonuclear bombs to create a canal somewhere in Oman or UAE, and problem solved. It's like, yes.
He actually said that.
He said this. And you know what? Maybe, and this is one of my favorite responses, maybe Steiner's Ninth Army will just set things right all of a sudden,
Steiner will come in. Steiner will make it right.
Yes, absolutely. Which somebody needs to do. I don't know if they've done it just yet, but somebody needs to do a parody of that scene from Downfall with, Trump and Netanyahu and, the dialogue.
It's pretty mind-boggling, the kind of commentary that you get from people who are supposed to be quite serious about this. But then again, it's like the entire war looks like it was planned and then started by children. It does. It's like, well, also the commentary about it is Donald Trump 2 days ago saying like nobody could have foreseen that Iran would strike back at Gulf countries where the US has its bases. This is it's quite a bit of insanity. But that he says something like that is one thing. That then the entire apparatus goes along with it and implements it is another.
Some of the news reported. Remember, they were interviewing the Iranian foreign minister, who I forget his name, but he's becoming Arabchi. He's becoming an internet sensation. They literally asked him, "How can you justify attacking American bases in the region?" And he's just like, because you attacked like, it's almost as if like, how dare you fight back? So it's more than just Trump. It's not just Trump. It's not Hegseth. It's not Cruz or Grant. I mean, you kind of put them all together and you just kind of realize that, I mean, I don't know about, you lump in Europe as well. When you throw in, Kallas and von der Leyen and Rutte and Macron and Starmer and Merz. Oh my God, Merz.
But that's the thing. I mean,
we're talking about some of the most pathetically mediocre, incompetent. Finish the sentence. I can't believe that if we were led by children, we would actually not have started this war.
And what you said earlier about the majority probably supporting Team Iran. I mean, this is certainly true in the global South. I mean, in anyone who's not part of Europe or North America. Tomorrow, I'm going to put out a video with a Chinese PhD student who does a wonderful job at explaining like why China didn't veto that UN Security Council resolution. The other one last week where they actually condemned Iran for hitting back. But the point is that while governments are very, very cautious at the moment, what they do and what they say and what they utter, the mood on the ground is pretty clear. The only question is Iran a victim, or is it going to be a fighting back victim, right? Is it so? Do you want to support somebody who's going to lose, or do you support somebody who might even win in the long run? Yeah. So the kind of bad blood that the United States and Israel do after 2 years of genocide is it's in its own league, I would say.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now that, of course, leads us to, ponder, and we can do this at another point, what are the possible scenarios for this war coming to a conclusion? And, our colleagues like, Glenn and Jeff, among others, I think we're all in the same boat here by saying that the United States is riding this tiger that it just cannot get off of right now. It can, it's just, we're in it for all kinds of, horrible purposes. And, that still presupposes that the country is led by rational people who can realize that perhaps we, we made a mistake, and all they have to do is just pull out, let IRGC continue to run Iran. Trump can give what, I don't know, he can, beat up on Cuba for a while or whatever. Israel can punch down, with more, against more Palestinians, because that's what they do. Okay, that's effectively what they do, is that they punch down on the weaker people.
Yeah.
But there's also, and I hate to bring this up now, but there's always a nuclear option. And I don't know who's going to come up with it first. Will Israel do it, or will Trump do it? Remember, Trump is having his, his whole l'état c'est moi moment. And he's screaming it in any direction to any audience that's going to believe him. But he is not the Sun King by far. I mean, look, every civilization has its mad emperor or king every so often, and we've got him now. I remember there was this great episode of Game of Thrones way in the beginning when the episodes were good. King's Landing is revolting against being besieged by Stannis Baratheon's army, and Joffrey, the idiot king or whatever it is, ordered his guards to start attacking the mob or whatever. And Tywin had said, listen, we've had idiot kings before, and we've had vicious kings before, but I don't think we've ever been plagued with a vicious idiot before. And I think that when the allegedly most powerful country in the world is run not just by one vicious idiot, but by a number of vicious idiots, don't expect stupidity to shoot oneself in the foot. Stupidity can still do an immeasurable amount of damage.
Yeah, but it's I mean, I wish we didn't have to explain everything that's happening just through stupidity. I wish there was some rational way of saying, like, okay, no, there's this logic or that logic, but the best thing I could find so far is basically Christian Zionism as an explanatory variable to why this was started in the first place. But that is not much better in terms of an explanation, I mean, of something satisfying. So
it's funny when, speaking of Christian Zionism, Mike Huckabee, who is, the Israeli ambassador to Israel, somebody had posted this to him. The Christian leaders in Palestine, in Jerusalem, have condemned Zionism. They have condemned evangelicism. We are talking about the Greek Orthodox Patriarch of Jerusalem, the Armenian Catholicos, the Latin. Okay, we are talking about the original historical heads of the Christian churches. And this was sent to Huckabee saying, you being a big, Christian, you do know that there are actual Christians that live in the area and have condemned this. And he basically said in no uncertain terms, well, they don't know what they're talking about, in so many words. Well, what do they know? They're misguided. So yes, I'm sure that there is some logic beyond just simply stupidity. And I think, that it really is that the United States is looking to secure regional hegemony in the Western Hemisphere and give Israel the opportunity to establish hegemony in the Middle East. Iran is the last major obstacle to that. All the other countries have either been subdued or vassalized. Iran is not going to go down easy. And in this stage of the game, what Iran is also doing is picking at the weaker Gulf states to make them seriously reconsider their position. Yeah. Notice that there's two other countries that have not done anything just yet: Saudi Arabia and Egypt. Yep. And they're not stupid for not doing anything right now. Yep. But if it gets to a point where they need to be dragged in, I would not put it past Washington or Tel Aviv to do something. Larijani had said, or it could be Argachi, it could be one of the two. They had said at some point that expect a 9/11 false flag as a way of widening this war. If that happens, and it's going to be blamed on Iran.
It was Larijani. Larijani wrote that in a post 4 days ago saying, we would never do a 9/11 type attack because we are not at war with the people of the United States. we will not hurt you. We're at war with the military, not with your people, not with the people.
Sure.
And that's the man who is now probably was killed by Israel. But well, Michael, thank you very much for your time today and that we could discuss this. I do hope that we can have some more hopeful analysis anytime soon. But people who want to follow you, they should go to your channel, Michael Rossi Policy.
Yep.
Policy. People who want to follow me, I'm reachable under Neutrality Studies.
Yep.
Michael Rossi.
Let me say, I mean, you guys, you have been doing a phenomenal job. I mean, one video or two, every single day. My hat goes off to you, good sir.
Right now, I just have so many interesting people to talk to, including you. So thank you, everybody who's sticking around for the conversations.
I have so many midterms I have to grade.
So I have no midterms.
Yeah, well, I have to run to class in about a half an hour. So this is that's my actual job.
Okay, go to the actual job and we'll talk later. Thank you.
Good to see you again. Bye-bye.